What is going on, everybody? My name is Michael Levan. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome to the Festive Tech Calendar for 2021. If you've attended sessions in the past, if this is your first session, welcome. We're obviously super happy to have you, and we're super happy to be able to host this type of event. So what I wanted to talk about in my session is kind of around the topic of like DevOps, SRE, cloud, like all of these things are super hard. It's not, a straightforward entry-level style role. I mean, when you're thinking about like an SRE or a DevOps role, you really have to be like not, a principal or staff level style of engineer, where you've been engineering solutions for 20, 25 years, but you do have to know a little bit of everything, so you do have to know development. And this is probably a topic that, I get a little bit of heat on, is the fact that like I tell people, hey, everybody's got to be a developer in today's world. And to be honest, it's true. You don't have to go out and build the next Twitter or the next Instagram or something like that, but you do have to know how to write code, whether it's automation code, whether it's application code. You do have to know how to write code. Whether you're using HCL for Terraform, or whether you're using Python, or whether you're using Go, three very, very popular languages today. You do have to know, a fair bit of code. Now, the other thing that you need to understand are systems. So, systems architecture, systems design, scalability, high availability, what a system looks like on-prem, like in a virtualized environment, maybe in ESXi or Hyper-V, versus in the cloud, like Azure, AWS. There's so many different options. And then there's the hybrid option where, you have systems in the cloud, you have systems on-prem, and you're kind of connecting the two. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. It's programming or development and systems. So how can you kind of learn all of this and keep yourself up to date and, not fall behind and almost like stay up with the tech times? Really what it comes down to today is keeping yourself updated with technology. And this is probably the most like relevant time in tech history where you need to constantly be keeping yourself up to date. Like I feel like we've always heard for years, you got to keep yourself up to date, every 2 to 5 years things are changing, this, that, the next thing. But now it's like you have to keep yourself up to date. Everything's changing every 6 months or less. Every week it's like we hear about a new product or, a new thing coming out. So how can you do all this? How can you stay up to date? Well, I have 3 tips to kind of keep yourself up to date. Now, the first tip, and I think this is the most relevant, honestly, this is what's like helped me. Enjoy what you do. Like enjoy the things that you're doing. Enjoy the stuff that you're working on. Like you could have, the best regimen in the world. Like you could hit the gym 5 days a week. You could have, an awesome diet. You could, not go out and drink every night or like not drink at all. Like you could be like the most straight edge, healthy, fit person in the world. And the reason why I bring this up is because like you read all these books, like these self-help books. It's like, oh, make sure you have a really good diet. Oh, make sure you have this. Oh, make sure you're working out. Make sure you're in a good headspace. And don't get me wrong, all of that stuff is ridiculously important. However, even if you do all of that stuff properly, you're still gonna have to enjoy what you do, because like you don't want to have to dread going to work. You don't want to have to dread creating something. You don't want to have to dread whatever you're doing. So like regardless of, if you have the perfect diet, the perfect fitness regimen, etc., it's still about enjoying what you're doing. And like this has been super crucial for me. Like if I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I just feel sluggish. Like I go to the gym, 4 or 5 days a week. I eat relatively healthy. I'm all about, getting good sleep. I rarely have a drink. I'm really not about that. But even though like I do all of these things like pretty perfect, it still doesn't matter. Like if I'm in front of the computer and I'm like, boy, I don't want to do this. Doesn't matter how good my gym session was. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, like from a fitness perspective or from a diet perspective or from a mindset perspective. I have to actually enjoy what I'm doing. And this is, such a crucial point. Enjoy what you're doing, please. If you're in a job right now and you're like, I kind of like it, I'm riding it out, I'm going to stay for a year, kind of see what happens. Like, maybe it's time to start looking. If you're like, I hate going to work, it's time to start looking. And it doesn't matter if you have a year of experience or 5 years of experience or 10 years of experience. Don't settle. Like, never settle, with a job. Always be excited about what you're doing. And this kind of goes into, rule number 2, or like my next point is, don't settle. Don't settle for anything less than what you feel that you want. The world is a crazy place. Like, everybody has the same hours in the day. Everybody's got 24 hours. And even though like everybody has the same exact amount of hours in the day, some people are more successful than others. And some people are happier than others. And it's not because like they find more time in the day. It's because they use their hours and their time far more efficiently. So the biggest thing is, don't settle. If you feel like, oh, I can't do this because I don't have the time, it's okay. Trust me, we all feel that way. But what you can do is start to look at, how you're spending your time and see how you can make it more efficient. For example, every Sunday, I get, this message on my iPhone, and it says either your time spent on your phone increased or decreased. If it increased, I could go and look and be like, what was I doing? Like, was I just like sitting there scrolling for 3 hours? And you know what? Maybe scrolling, like, and just like decompressing and stuff, like, that's okay, but I don't need to do that for 3 hours. Like, maybe I could do that for 30 minutes, or maybe I could do that for an hour. But, that means that I have 2 more hours that I could spend on bettering myself, on doing something that I want to be doing, on not settling, on like building what I want to be building and doing what I want to be doing. So don't settle. That's like such a crucial thing. I mean, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but not settling and actually like living the way that you want to live and doing the things that you want to do, this is like the most crucial thing for me. I mean, I can't tell you like how many people I know that are just drifting. Like, they're just like drifting through life. And for some people that's okay. Like, they wake up, they have their coffee, they go to work, they come home, they sleep. But to me, like, it's such a limited life to do that. Like, it's so confined. And here's the thing, everybody, like, we all have one mind, we all have one body, we all have one life. Like, regardless of what you believe in, afterlife or reincarnation or this, that, the next thing, at the end of the day, the mind, the brain that you have right now, like, that's the only one that you have. So why not use it to the best of your abilities? Like, why not do the things that you want to do? Like, if you're sitting here right now and you're watching this and you're like, I really want to start a blog, like, I've been wanting to for so long, I want to get out there, go and start that blog. If you're like, oh, I really wanted to start YouTube, but I'm a little shy and I'm not really sure if like I want to, do this, go do it. It's okay. Just do it. The biggest thing is like, and this actually moves us into rule number 3 here. The biggest thing is just do stuff. Sometimes I use the other word, but just do stuff, okay? When I say stuff, I mean like just get out there and do something. Like, if you've been planning on something for a long time, like, you might have a crazy amount of notes. Like, you might have, a bunch of different notebooks sitting right next to you. Like, I have my notebooks here. Maybe, I got a bunch of stuff in my notebooks and I'm like, this is the plan that I'm going to do. This is the stuff that I'm going to do. I'm going to really jump out here and start this blog, or I'm going to do this YouTube. I have all these ideas. But here's the thing. A lot of people get stuck on the idea and like the planning and this, that, the next thing. And they never do it because it's like, oh, what if people don't like my reading? Or, oh, what if people don't like my engineering skills? Or, oh, what if people don't like my videos? Don't worry about that. Just get out there and do stuff. Make it happen. 1 blog a week, 2 blogs a week, 1 blog a month, 1 video a month. Just get started. Just get out there and do it. And here's the thing that you have to remember when you're doing that. Not everything that you're going to do is successful. Like, it's not going to be a success. For me, like, I've been doing this for a long time in terms of like content creation and engineering and getting myself out there. And I still have blog posts that fail, or I still have, consulting engagements that I don't close the deal. And you know what? That's okay, because like it doesn't matter if you're in the game for a year, 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, like everything is not going to always be successful. You will always have failures. There will never be anything that you just do and you just keep doing it and you just keep being successful at. Like that's not the way life works. Any successful person, whether they're millionaires or whether they're billionaires or whether they're trillionaires or whether like, you know, they don't have any money at all, like any successful person will always tell you that they have far more failures than they do success. I forget where I was reading this, but I feel like maybe it was like Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. If anybody has watched that show, super funny show and good show. I think it was either him or somebody else, but like if you're an entrepreneur your entire life, like if you start at 20 years old and you end at 50 years old, you know, 30 years, or maybe you end at 60 years old, 40 years, 30 years, 4 years, in that time frame, you're going to have hundreds of ideas, right? Maybe you're going to try hundreds of products or hundreds of businesses, but typically people have 3 to 5 really good business ideas throughout their life. So think about that. If there's an entrepreneur and they're starting or trying hundreds of businesses or hundreds of ideas, they're probably only going to have like 3 to 5 really big hits. So think about that. Now, of course, you know, when you're a blogger, when you're a YouTuber, when you're a consultant, like you're not going to only have 3 to 5 really good blogs in your career, or you're not going to have, you know, only 3 clients throughout your career. But the point kind of still stands there, you know, where like if you're an engineer, like, you know, and you have, let's say, I don't know, 10 jobs throughout your life, 2 or 3 of them might be really good. Or if you write, you know, 100 blogs in a year, maybe 20 or 30 of them might be really good. And that's okay. Like there is nothing wrong with something not working. There is nothing wrong with a product idea not working. There's nothing wrong with an engineering idea not working. There's nothing wrong with a piece of code not working. The idea is that you just got to get out there and do stuff. All right, so that's, you know, kind of my 3 tips there on, you know, how to succeed. And one thing that I want to point out is like I didn't use I don't think I used the word DevOps at all in those 3 tips. And there's a reason for that, because like, you know, not only will those 3 tips be successful for you in your DevOps journey, but also just like in your life journey and in your tech journey and stuff in general. And that's really the point that I wanted to make and hit home. So shifting gears for a second, I want to talk about, you know, what I'm kind of seeing in the DevOps space today and the things that you should definitely be focused on right now. I pretty much split my time today between consulting and advisory services, so like hands-on engineering, product help from a DevOps and SRE perspective, what direction organizations should be going in. And then the other half I spend, you know, content creation, like doing talks like this, podcasts, blogs, videos, and I spend a lot of time as a research analyst. So if you're not familiar with research, essentially what happens is you pick a topic, you know, maybe it's application security or maybe it's CICD, and you vet all of the different vendors, like the large vendors, you know, anybody from Microsoft to AWS to Google and any other large organization. So I spend a lot of my time talking to these organizations in vendor briefings to kind of talk about, you know, what their products are doing, the way that the world is going from a tech perspective, and what to ultimately be excited about and stay focused on. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about right now. We're going to be talking about the top types of technologies that I want you to focus on. Now, the one thing that I do want to say before we move on is I'm a firm believer of one huge thing, and that huge thing is never truly focus on just the platform. So for example, GitHub Actions, very hot CI/CD tool right now. But instead of saying like, I just want to be a GitHub Actions expert, say to yourself, I want to be a CI/CD expert. Because here's the thing, there are always going to be so many different types of tools out there. You know, you're going to have what feels like a new CI/CD platform every week. But if you know CI/CD and what it is, then you'll be able to learn any of the other tools and platforms out there. So focus on the technology, not on the platform. For example, don't focus on GitHub Actions, focus on CI/CD. So up first, we have development. Now, as I always tell everybody, in this world, you have to be a developer. You have to understand how to write code, how to read code, and ultimately application architecture, because at the end of the day, you can't deploy an application if you don't understand it. From an infrastructure as code perspective, Terraform is definitely on the top right now. It's definitely one that you should be focused on. From a developer perspective, from like a writing code and a general purpose programming language perspective, Python and Go are definitely the two top right now from a DevOps and SRE perspective. So you could go either way. If you've never written code before, I would probably recommend Python. I personally go, pun intended, I personally go in the Go direction because I just like Go. But if you're just starting out, I definitely recommend Python. Okay, the next thing up here is the cloud. So this is not a surprise. The cloud is obviously taking over. You know, a lot of organizations are moving workloads to the cloud, whether they're doing, you know, hybrid cloud or just 100% cloud. In this case, you really can't go wrong with Azure, AWS, and GCP. They're the top three, and at the end of the day, if you know one, you could learn the other ones. You know, in AWS, for example, you got Lambda functions, and in Azure, you got Azure functions. Same thing, just different branding, but the purpose of it is the same. Okay, then you need a system and OSs. Now, when I say a system, I mean bare metal, I mean virtualized servers, I mean containers, I mean serverless. Essentially, anywhere that you can deploy an application, that's your system. And then you have operating systems. So of course, you got Linux, you got Windows. I would say from a, you know, application deployment perspective, you're most likely deploying to Linux, whether, you know, you're using Docker containers that are running Linux, whether you're using virtualized machines. At the end of the day, a lot of the stuff is Linux that you're deploying to. However, there's nothing wrong with Windows. If you have a, you know, specific application like a .NET application that you need to run on Windows, you could use Windows, and you could use Windows containers. And, you know, for build servers for CICD and stuff, you could use both Linux and Windows, and both are perfectly good. All right, so then you have serverless and containers. Serverless is, you know, definitely a huge thing. When you think about serverless, really what it is application code running on a system that you don't have to manage. So, you know, with AWS Lambda functions or with, you know, Azure functions, really all you need to do is just take your code that you wrote, ensure that you package up the dependencies and the requirements, and ship it. You don't have to worry about scaling a system. You don't have to worry about the networking, nothing. You just have to worry about the code. Now, from a containerization perspective, Docker, definitely still probably the most popular. However, you do have different container engines like CRI-O and Containerd. In fact, with Kubernetes now, you're most likely either running CRI-O or Containerd for the containerization engine. You are no longer running Docker. And then, of course, orchestration. You know, you had Mesos, you had Docker Swarm, but at the end of the day, Kubernetes has definitely been the victor. There's clearly no doubt about that. Right? So from a source control perspective, you got a bunch of different places that you can store code. Azure repos, GitLab, bunch of places. However, I would say probably the most popular source control and version control system today is GitHub. And if you're not familiar with GitHub, it's essentially just where you save your code. Okay, from a security standpoint, you must be thinking about security. One thing that I actually didn't add in here was CICD Security, which should definitely be on the top of your list. So CICD Security, ensure that your pipelines are secure. Ensure that what you're deploying is secure. Ensure that you have continuous monitoring set up to ensure that what's being deployed, you're actually able to log it and see what's happening. Code and application security. Make sure you got security checks in there. Make sure that you're using, you know, some type of linter that is security specific. Like for example, in Go, there's a linter called GoSec, which scans your code for common issues like plain text passwords. Now, another thing here is infrastructure as code, security and testing. Even though it's infrastructure as code, you should still be testing it. There should still be tests behind it, just like any other type of code. And then of course you got system security. So you have to secure operating systems, you have to secure virtualized systems, you got to secure containers and Kubernetes. It's a huge thing. There are people out there that, literally their job is to break into systems. You want to play on defense as much as you can. All right, next, of course, we got CICD. All right, so of course, there are a ton of other CICD vendors out there, but here's just, top 3 that you can get out there and get started with for free. And as a trial, so Harness.io, you can get a trial. GitHub Actions, you can get started for free. GitLab, you can get started for free. Now to monitoring. Now, here's the thing. Deploying an application and writing code and doing all this stuff, it's all fine and dandy, but if you can't properly monitor your system, that's a huge deal. So systems monitoring, you can look at tools like Datadog and New Relic. Application performance monitoring, or APM, you can look at New Relic, Datadog, or Dynatrace to ensure that your application is performing the way that you're expecting. You got serverless monitoring, Thundra, AWS X-Ray, Datadog, New Relic. Ensure that you're able to monitor your invocations, for example, on serverless. And then finally, we got alerting and on-call. You got PagerDuty, VictorOps, and Xmatters. A few things that I do want to point out here, as well as automated runbook. So from an SRE perspective, if you got an on-call alert happening, you can automate a lot of that stuff, and you can use tools like PagerDuty's Rundeck. You can use Xmatters to automatically resolve on-call issues, and that certainly helps you a lot, so you don't have to wake up at 2 a.m. So with that, thank you everybody. Really do appreciate it. Please enjoy the rest of the sessions. I hope that you enjoyed this session, and feel free to reach out on both LinkedIn and Twitter. Thank you everybody. Take care and have a good rest of your year.